Hello. So I'm going to use this mesh to demonstrate some things about shoulder topology, re-establishing symmetry, joining meshes, and a few little fix-its which come in sort of on the side. My keyboard and mouse combos, when clicked or pressed, will come up in here, except for I'm using magnifier to zoom, and the keyboard control for that is also going to come up in here. And so if I do that, then yeah, you might see what I'm pressing being reflected in there too, just for that zoom. Okay, so what I've done is I've created a box, and I've set it so that its faces are roughly square, and I'm going to build out a shoulder topology that works better for when the arm is hanging down on the ground. I'm just going to quickly save this, which is a good practice full stop, and show you another thing, which is kind of the results of this. So if I get my recent files, which is nice and convenient. So we've got this figure here. Now I've just been into my attribute editor and changed the name of the object, so it's not PQ1 anymore. But I haven't done it in this one yet. Okay, so this is still a PQ1. Attribute editor kind of generally hangs around there if you're in the modeling standard thing, and modeling standard workspace. So this is the mesh that has this new kind of optimized technology for arms bend. So you need to use a T-pose for various outputs. You know, most auto rigging applications, including Mixamo Online and mocap, often needs T-pose as well. So although kind of in modeling terms getting an A pose would be a good way of enforcing that the mesh carries a good amount of topology over the shoulders in the first place, there's not many convenient applications of rigging that allow an A pose. So we're going to work on the basis of T pose. So you can see my head got a lot of topology added into it and is not very well modeled, but the topology is pretty good, bar the odd N gone. So it's a face with more than 4 sides, or indeed a triangle here and there. But to join these two things is now not possible until we've got more edges aiming into this border ring here. So this ring here has 8 edges, and this ring there has 22. So until those figures match up, I can't join the mesh to make it one kind of integrated kind of complete mesh. Okay, so we're not going to be joining that. I'm not going to build up the torso in particular, but I'll go back to that other file and we'll build out the shoulder structure, and then have a strategy for kind of quickly creating the arms and maybe the hands as well, and then joining them together to be one mesh. Okay, and on the way we're going to fix a symmetry issue, which I might accidentally create anyway, but who knows. Okay, so let's go back to the other file. So recent files, this one. Okay, so this is the mesh in concern, and in the attribute editor I created a name change so that over here That's the name of my object instead of pcube1. Okay, so so I've arranged for square objects and in the channel box up here. It's the last icon, so I won't zoom in on this one. But the object has the input of polycube1, and these are the settings that I've applied into it. So you notice if I just roll up a bit, there's nothing in the scale, it's just 1. And so all your sizing is done in the width, height and depth. There's a sort of close correlation in the subdivisions as well, so I've got a centre line going up and down the model, so between left and right I've got a centre line, and I've only got 2 divisions depth, which gives us a sort of square 2x2 face base for the arm to stem from. So I go into face mode. I'm using drag select, which is quick and dirty, and I'm not going to turn symmetry on because I'm going to show you how to fix symmetry when it's gone off, so I won't need to do that much to have no kind of symmetry usage. So I'm going to extrude out about yay much. I'm going to have it set to 2 divisions, and then I'm going to go to move first off. So I want to move this last one out, then rotate it. You can see what keys I'm pressing, and then raise it up, and then I want to go to edge mode. I don't find the keyboard thing for edge and vertex and face to be very intuitive, so it's somewhere on the function keys, which is more of a reach, and I then have to kind of look where they are, whereas other kind of more obvious keys like Q, W, E and R for select, move, rotate and scale, they come easily to my hand, it seems. Okay, so I'm just moving things around, so we've got a kind of base structure ready for creating the arm shape, and then this next thing is a multi-cut. So holding control down, building a sort of automated placement of that, and then we've got another edge here. So oops. So one of the things that I forget to do, or nearly forgot there, is I forget to disengage multi-cut, and I might end up building something kind of invisible or accidental by clicks that don't seem to have gone anywhere. You can see it really wants to do something there, even though I'm thinking about another thing I want to do. And the worst thing is really to extrude. So remembering to separate out extrudes, remembering to undo extrudes is a bit of a pain as well. And these are the things that foul up your symmetry in the short term, and in the long term, really quite nightmarishly, they so I've hit the Q to stop the operation. They mean that you can have a mesh that looks okay from the outside, but then is declined by your auto rigging, and then that's not a happy place to be. So what I'm going to do is make these faces now as the base of the arm, and now I've started to build in this kind of sweep up of the arm topology, so that we've got a few kind of to space out here, a few edge loops to space out here, but once we're using these as the base of the arm, this is all you got in the armpit, which is kind of as much as you need, if not maybe slightly more. Okay, so what then follows is just grabbing a few and starting to compress them up, because they're sort of arm, shoulder, top bits that don't really need to be kind of so spread apart. Like this. So what I want to do now is make this base point here flat. And just deselect that edge there. That's the move thing, so I'll go Q. And I'll get it right more or less by eye. But what you really want is it completely flat, because when you extrude out, you don't want any little angle to cause the object to taper out, or even worse, to kind of taper in and intersect itself. Okay, so I'll get that roughly right. The topology might not look very kind of well explained. I'm going to try sort of a trick that is a temporary thing, just to make it easy for me, so I don't have to keep looking around the back. So if I use object front to back, that's Z, object Z symmetry. That means if I select this vert here on that side, I should have 2 selected, which means the corresponding one on the identical topology, which is mirrored around the other side, is also selected. So that's a kind of just a time saver convenience thing rather than a necessity. You don't need to use that. And of course I'm going to check this before I do anything else, but it does mean that for the moment I can have identical topology, which is always going to be a good thing. See, that one didn't want to go, but that's on the line of symmetry, so I'll get that roughly right, because my next trick will kind of fix that up. Oh, that's interesting. That, oh, of course I'm on symmetry, aren't I? That's another good thing about the symmetry front to back is, yeah, I double selected the edges. Okay, so it's starting to look more like it should now. If I just poke that down a bit. This one looks like a triangle, but it's actually four-sided, so it's a good bit of topology. You get this funny shading thing. Now, this can look like bad topology looks like, but also it can be the result of smooth shaded faces being bent down around a big corner. And so what I want to do, I'm going to turn symmetry off. I'm just going to have a quick look and see what happens if I drag something out. Is there a bit of hidden mesh somewhere? Undo. And the same thing there. I don't think I've made a mistake, but talking and doing could very easily have led to that. Okay, so if you've got something like that and you just want to kind of, is the right word fix it? It might be. Let's get my object Z on. Is it Z? Yeah, Z. What you can do is find an edge right in the middle of it and kind of force it to go. There we go. So just by hardening it, it's removed that display artifact, and it's a happy mesh now. So that's not to say I haven't made a mistake somewhere along the way. So I'm going to turn symmetry off, although actually, for that last thing I could have kept on it. Ring select these. So now I can just extrude out the arm. I'm not going to do that because what I want to show you next is the possibility that you can have in terms of join. Okay, so here's the base polys of the mesh. They're a little bit wide. I could do with them being a little bit squarer, so I'm going to just do a bit of scaling to get them kind of better by eye. Still a bit more. So it's just a visual process I'm using now. Okay, and then the next thing is, because I don't want the arm to be slightly bent upwards, because auto rigging will probably want to say something about that. So these four selected, if I go to vertex mode and pick, say, this center vertex, what I'm going to do now is go to Move tool and then look here with the Move settings, and I can make it sort of explicit by selecting the x-axis. I want to make sure that these faces are completely flat on the x-axis. So if I steal the coordinates there from the x-axis, it'd be nice if there was a right click and you could choose copy and paste from that, but there's not, so you can use keyboard for this. So up in the show off, Control C, and then next thing is you'll need the show hide the select field. So that x coordinate there, I can set this single vertex with that, but I can't set multiples. So to set multiples, I'll need to select them. So I'll go back to polygon mode. Now if I do Control and click this vertex icon here, it selects all the vertices that were from my face selection. Okay, so they're all selected, but they're still not flat yet, and we can see that from this view here. I wish it would zoom to follow the mouse. Maybe there is a setting for that. Maybe you can put something in the comments. I don't know. Okay, so I've got my x coordinate from that vertex, copied it. So now if I paste it in here, Control V, and hit the return key, the enter. And there you go. You can see that that's gone vertical now. So if you want to align a whole load of stuff into the one axis or another, you can do it via the numbers. So you kind of pick a setting for one that is in the right place and copy the numbers from one and paste it in to select all the others. That thing converting selection from one component to another, that's really useful for quickly getting things that you can find, you know, like a ring select of several faces is quicker than picking out all the individual vertices, but it's the vertices that you can add the number into. Okay, so I flatten that up, and then the next thing is go back to face mode and do edit mesh, circularize. Now that provides some sort of I don't know, incidental twist or whatever for whatever reason. I think it's something to do with trying to average out the changes it makes to the mesh as a whole, but we don't want that rotation, so I'm going to go E to rotate and just that's undoing. Make sure I pick the single axis. So I'm going to rotate that, and again, if I wanted to make sure that was spot on set on the x axis plane, then I do that selection thing, you know, get a coordinate for the x and paste it in here when they were all selected. Okay. Oh, you can't easily do that alignment thing with the with face selection, so you have to do it through vertices selection. Okay, now so that's all right for extrusion, but actually what I'm going to do is show you how easy it is to join stuff. Now it's no accident that I've got, if I go to edge mode and zoom in here, if I double click, now because it's not quite sure what I'm intending, I can't double click everything, so there it's kind of going away. So this is a point where you lose the convenience of quickly double clicking. So I'm going to have to hand pick these. So just hold shift down and click on them, and that should be 8. So 8 edges selected. If you've got symmetry on, of course it's going to say 16. But this means, because it's circularized, and if I want this to join in to create another mesh, then all I need to do is remove these faces here and have a quick roll around just to make sure that there's not kind of a spare vertex hanging around. Go to vertex mode and yep, that looks okay. And now I should be able to do the old double clicky thing. Still not? Oh well. Oh, there we go. So as long as I show it 8 faces circularly arranged with missing polys on one side, then I should be able to join it automatically. Okay, so this doesn't have to be circular to do this, by the way. As long as it's just got 8, the closer the shapes are, the better the mesh will be, though, in terms of profile. Okay, so now I'm going to go to cylinder, and the cylinder I've just created is somewhere probably hidden in the mesh, but I'll do a few things here. So I'm in the first and only input. I got a radius of 1. Well, that's no good, is it? So because I've used some sort of real world sizing, I know my cube or box that I started with is 25 centimeters deep, so I reckon if my radius is 10, which is half the diameter, then that should be about the same. Height, which is kind of arm length, now I'll just do for the forearm, so that's about 30 centimeters, isn't it? And then subdivisions on the axis. So the axis is kind of rotational of the cylinder, and of course I need 8, which will give me 8 sides ready for my mesh. Subdivisions height 1, caps. If I can have no caps, that'd be brilliant. Does it like a? Yes, it does. Brilliant. So I've got an empty. I made a cylinder with an empty end. Okay, and then the next thing is probably a bit of translation. So, sorry, rotation. So I want to rotate it round the. So there's my new cylinder there. A little bit big, but we'll see what happens. So I need to rotate it 90 around the Z axis. Yeah. So I know it's kind of not very intuitive to use the numbers, but it actually makes things a lot easier in the long run. And then I'm just going to drag it actually. So now it's kind of in position. So that's a little bit big, so I'm going to decrease the radius. Is it 9? That's pretty good, I must say. Okay, now I need to look at the end of my choose the right one. It's supposed to have an empty end. No, I think it's filled it. Doesn't matter, we can get rid of that. Okay, so that's kind of in position, and what I'm going to get when I've done that is a bridge. There's also one called merge, which if you get them close enough and they're the right shape, that happens kind of sort of without creating an extra loop. In fact, it would merge the two border loops together, so where there were 2 there would be 1. Now the problem with that is, of course, you've got to spend some time fiddling. If you've done any kind of handiwork on one of the meshes, it's just a bit of a faff to get them together. So building it as a bridge will be better, because you don't have to do so much fiddling and tweaking to get it into the right kind of state to join together. Okay, so by the way, if you're working in Symmetry, as soon as you get to the point where you want to join something on both sides at once, the thing to do is to make a mirror copy of the object before you join it, so when it's still a separate object as this is now. Or you just bash away on one side and do what I'm about to do after I've just done this join option, which is to mirror the mesh. So I'm going to delete this cap here, and I'm going to leave the cap at this end anyway, because I could then extrude this out to further build the arm in. So that can join. That's in a sort of good state, and the other one's also in a good state. And so the bridge process should be relatively easy. So the next thing to do is combine meshes. So for that I'm going to need to go object mode, select them both. Now I think because the green one is the kind of base, I'm going to end up with my mesh called P cylinder 1 if I go with that one. So if I deselect, start with that one, and then, no, whichever way I do it. Interesting. Well, let's see what happens anyway. Yeah, whichever way around, doesn't matter. Okay, so they're both selected. I'll go mesh, combine. So you can merge UV sets, but there's not a mesh merge thing. So if I do apply, now they're both green. Let's see what disaster in terms of my naming. Oh, they've taken the master name. You'll also find when you do these combines that you have a kind of historical record of what was originally there. I probably should have deleted the history. Anyway, I'm going to do on this object, I'm going to do delete history now, and that means, hey presto, all that other historical stuff has gone. Okay, so any mess ups in the mesh are kind of unrecoverable from, in the sense of I can't kind of step backwards and get them back through the history. Okay, now so we'll go edge mode and ring select. So that's 8 edges, and then I'll need to do the same here, and hold the shift down this time. So these 16 edges are selected, and then there's a bridge command there, and bingo. So now I've gone from the blockiness of the mesh to a more cylindrical arm, which is kind of what you want. Now the reason why you do it that way is because you want to have flat surface to extrude out from. So rather than use a cylinder for the torso, and of course the cylinder doesn't have the right structure on the top end either, or using some sort of circular eyes before doing the extrude, again you're removing kind of flat surfaces that you extrude out from. Okay, so that's how you join some meshes. So for the right shape for an arm, oh by the way, the cylinder comes by default with these hard edge, and by targeting a load of edges all at once, oh I was on drag then. So by selecting those edges and going mesh display, soften, it already looks better. Now obviously it's still going to have kind of these jagginess there, so if this was like a sleeve of a coat, then that would still look pretty jaggy, but we want to get the base structure there before we start adding topology. Okay, so while it's still easy to manage. So if I kind of soften these edges, it won't make a lot of sense in terms of the the way the mesh is structured. It will be kind of a sort of a bit easily fake looking. Okay, so if I was going to go further with this, then I'd probably start thinking about how this could extrude out and become a hand or something of that ilk. But in order to create that context, what I really need to do is select that face, extrude out, and now start to kind of taper. I'm not doing this to any great particular scale, and it's going to be massively bulky for sort of too long. So I want to do some rectification to it beforehand. Now I'm going to do a gentle offset, and this is a point where it's really easy to overdo it and to end up intersecting the mesh. So if I go too far with that, you can see that's intersecting itself. So none of that, please. So I'm thinking of tapering it to the width of the wrist rather than the width of, the width of the wrist rather than the height of the wrist when the palm is facing down. And again, if I wanted to change the profile going round there, then I do a scale, and I could do that all at once, or I could say, well, when the palm's facing down, the arm's in a kind of a twist, and so it's kind of taller than it is wide from front to back, so that kind of caper there. Whereas for the, it's funny how the ring select works from some edges but not others. In this case, none. Which makes me think, is there a mistake somewhere there? I can only see a limited bit of I've got no idea why that might work sometimes but not others. Okay, so the old select conversion trick, which is, in fact, if I just scale that one, that's what I'll do. So R scale, and that gets me closer to what I want, but just move it towards what you want it to be, but not all the way. Just kind of start to suggest it for a while. So so for the elbow, I might want to do similar to what I did with the shoulder, actually, because the elbow can kind of suffer for some sort of cranking, and it only bends in one direction, and so you can kind of make the mesh prepare for that in a similar way. But there are some topology strategies, especially if you look at the topology stuff for limbs and other specific joints in polycount.com. Okay, now, so to build in some structure for the wrist to fit in, I'm kind of taking the idea that there's a cuff scenario. You might have just heard my somewhat aggressively social cat just then. So I'm going to extrude in, but I'm just going to make a no thickness offset extrude, and this will build in a structure that I can join in with a hand. Now the reason why I might make a hand separately and join it in, there's a few reasons. One is just you could build the hand in a different file, or kind of build the hand kind of at a larger size, for the reasons being, several of the display settings, like I said before, soft selection uses real world dimensions, and things like extrudes likewise. So, but you might want to build a kind of super big version and scale it down, size it down nearer the time. Or it might just be easy for you to model something away from everything else. So that's the idea behind this in particular. But anyway, more joining practice. And again, we've got 8 edges, so not added any more detail to this yet. So that's what I'm going to do. Okay, so I could remove this mesh from visibility, or you know, as I see fit. So the hand. Okay, so I'm going to create the hand at some distance away from the mesh. Maybe I'll just, yep, I'm going to turn off visibility of this. That's what I'm going to do. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the object menu here, do show hide, which is nice. I'm in the middle of an operation. Let's try that again. Object show hide. There we go. Just remember it's there, but I'm going to build the hand in space. Okay, so let's make a cube. Okay, so there's the little cube, and it's going to be a sort of hand size. So I'm looking at a hand right now, and I'm thinking make it slightly on the large side. 10 by 10 and about 3 centimeters high. Let's have a go with that. So we've got width of the hand. So I'm thinking about the hand as it's kind of viewed, stuck on the side in the T pose. So width wise would be I'm going to 12. Height would be 4 and 5, and depth will be 12. Subdivisions are 2 on each axis. Okay, there's the magnifier of that if you're interested.
2.
It just spoke the 2 for me. Okay, oh, there's that final one. Okay, so that's the palm of the hand. Now, in order to create a structure from which you build out fingers, then we'll do it in the kind of quick and dirty way, and then we'll aim to then fix up the mesh issues that will result from this. So the mesh issues are this. If I drop in a ring there and a ring there, that's okay, but we've got this detail that we don't need going down the hand, but we are going to need it presently, because when we want to get a more rounded profile, we're going to need a little bit more of everything in terms of flexibility to be able to mess around. So these are sort of the base points that the finger goes on. Now, as I look at this, I'm also seeing that it's maybe it's now a bit tall, so these fingers are being a bit kind of tall from top to bottom, and even more so when you take into account adding spaces for the fingers. So let's do the beveling. I need to select something first. So we're going drag. Oh, I'm back in marquee mode for selection, which is no good. Let's drag. This multi-component thing sometimes is useful, sometimes nice and quick and dirty, but it can only select one type of component at once, so it's of limited value, I suppose, in that sense. And then I want to select that edge that was already there, and then do bevel, and this gives us a separation between the two fingers. And if I turn off chamfer, a nice little result of this is that all of the polys, oh no, I got that wrong. With chamfer off, I've got triangles there, a pair of triangles. If you add a pair of triangles together, that's what happens with chamfer off. Now, that does need a bit of qualification actually. So I end up with a big triangle rather than a pair of triangles. So that's the preferred result at this point. Okay. Now, so I could scale the box down, but because I've still got access to its original input settings, I can reduce this to 3, and that should now give me a much better kind of profile to start kicking the edges out, the fingers out from. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of that. That's all done now. Enforce face selection. Now, if I want to extrude these out, I want to add maybe a little bit of angling out for them, so they just diverge a little bit. So if I do drag select these two, rotate a smidget, and drag select those two and rotate those a smidget too, and then I'll move that one back. I'm looking at it from the kind of thumb side of the hand. Okay, but this follows the same sort of rules, methodology as the other aspects, that you get the core structure in there, then you add enough detail to make it smooth and curved, or super detailed afterwards, and everything else can kind of be built onto the core base mesh, kind of rough topology. Is that the right word? Anyway, so drag these in, and you could spend some time kind of just changing, tweaking the size of these so they end up, you know, more like the variable finger size that a real person has. But we're on to quick and dirty. So as I build out the thickness there, I can start to think about a little bit of offset. It's quite fiddly by hand, and so settings like that, because it's going in sort of seemingly fixed increments according to the mouse, it's very fiddly to kind of hand jockey it into the right sort of setting. So if I'd gone super big, the amount of offset would probably be quite comfortable to drag rather than set with numbers. Okay, so usually better to model bigger than you intend than it is to model smaller than you intend. Okay, so I'm going to go Q to do the selecty thing, which means just select stuff, don't attempt anything else, that would be rash. So while they're still selected, I can also do a little bit of rotate, do an extrude, and this just starts ever such a gentle kind of relaxed finger, which will tend to improve things when it comes to how you see your mesh, what happens when you add some more edge loops, etc. So another rotate, I think, and then I'm just going to scale them a bit flatter, get a slightly better cross section. Strangely enough, this middle finger here has got the smallest kind of profile, but I'm ignoring that. You'd see that developing. Step back a couple, do some editing of the base of the finger before creating it to make that happen. Okay, and then one final extrude, which is quite a short one, and add the final bit of taper into there. And you also might find it useful, while they're still all selected, just to add a little bit of a rotate there, provide some of the fair amount of a good suggestion for a fingertip. Okay, so back to the channel box. Remember I showed you that sort of in the webbing there we had that chamfer on, chamfer off, and there was a line. Let's see if we can step back in the inputs and find where that was. There was that bevel there. Chamfer was on. This is not guaranteed to work, by the way, and it's a pig to okay, so this is the version of working that we've got. It's not too bad, actually. So it doesn't necessarily follow that you can go back and edit stuff and not pay any consequences for it. I'm going to undo that. Okay, so a better approach will probably just be to multi-cut lines in by hand at this point. Okay, now looks blocky. It's got good sort of base structure, I guess, but not very human looking. But you can see how maybe with a bit of relaxed work that could start to look a lot better. How close are you going to see the hand that you're making? That's the thing that you think about when you're thinking about data to add to it. Okay, now you remember that this hand at its wrist point is going to go into an 8 edge kind of ring or boundary border thing, but we've got more than that, and that's because of these edges were cut down to here. So to get these two to join together, we need to make it so that we don't have edges going to this point here. So just so you can sort of see how that's moving towards making a wrist joint, I'm going to select these faces on the end here. Do one kind of extrude and a bit of an offset just to size it down a little bit. But actually, if I can kind of grow it up that way and down that way, the shape's getting better. What's not quite so good is that we've still got those extra edges in there. So because I finished with that end of it, I can now delete those faces, and if I do double click around the border, if I possibly, there we go, it works that one but not others, and so we see we got 12. So I'm going to apply, if I can, a topology symmetry, and that might make things a little bit easier. Yeah, so I'm going to do topology symmetry because topologically it is symmetrical. It's got the same structure either side of a particular center line. Where it's slightly different is in the placement of that topology. Okay, so I'm going to go to symmetry topology, and this means I don't have to work on sort of both sides of the hand at once. So go to topology, I'm going to choose the center line, which is that one. So it's a kind of left-right thing. So if I either side of that selected edge there, my work should end up being symmetrical. So goes the theory. Okay, so I've got some edges I don't want. Oh, it didn't like my choice of object symmetry there. Now, the reasons for that, I can't guess. Topology, let's try that one. Nope. So I'll change my approach and try topology, that one. Nope, I haven't. I've got no symmetry possibilities in this. I'm going to have to replicate both sides. Okay, so this is a strategy you can use on any aspect of modelling. If you need to reduce edge flow to a particular point, then the hand is a great example of this. So I'm going to select this edge, that edge there, control delete. Now I'm just going to go to vertex mode and see if it's left any verts. No, it's removed the verts as well, but this is now not a quad, so edge flow wouldn't be very good. But thankfully the fix for that is nice and quick, and we'll be back with quads in no time. So we've got one kind of non-quad. It was two quads before, and the fix is simply to do some multi-cutting, which follows this pattern. So we go from there to that corner there, right click to snap it off because we want to start another multi-cut. From there to that corner there, right click again to snap it, and then simply from there to there. Okay, so this area here, which was two quads originally, is now three. This looks like a triangle, but it's actually got a fourth vertex there. And if I get busy with quad draw, if I hold shift down, it's relaxing, and you can also see that's how you get some curves. Okay, so quad draw is your friend. If I continue the process and do the same thing on the other side, then I will have 8 edges. 8 is a kind of magic number when you started with a kind of blocky mesh, just because it's kind of the minimum amount of detail that approaches curvature. If it's four sides, it's still a bit square. 6 sides is just awkward to work with in a lot of contexts and circumstances. Okay, so I'll do that again. Edge drag, hold down shift, edge drag, select those, control and delete, get rid of them. Vertex, just make sure there's no vertices kind of stuck on any of those edges there, or even not in the end there. And then multi-cut, we go from there to there, from there. Oh, thankfully, Control Z gives you just one snap off. snap off again, and then from here across to there, boom, back to quads. Yay. Okay, so what have we got at the end of the hand now? Edge mode, double click, 8 edges selected. Okay, so if I was to think about this in terms of making it fit the destination area better, then I would want to do maybe a circularize. Let's see what happens. Edit mesh, circularize. That's pretty good, actually. Yeah. And then scale down like that. Now, the only thing sometimes happens is the exact orientation of the circular kind of produces bits of mesh that don't line up. But actually, I think that's going to be pretty good. Okay, so before you ask about a thumb would come out from these 4 here, and it's a complex procedure. You've got, say, you've got about 3 joints in the thumb, maybe 4 where it joins onto the hand. But in literal human terms, there's, I think, sort of just 3 bones. But in terms of shape, you probably want 4 extrudes. But obviously, you want to also make them so that they are where bones, joints are. So it's a mix of extruding, and then you kind of try and get it to rotate round so that the thumb is sort of forwards. Also, the thumb kind of hangs off the bottom of the hand when you pay it palms face down. Okay, so I won't do the thumb. You can kind of just build it out progressively, tapering and rotating and scaling, and it gets there. Okay, so this is an object, I think, that's ready to go. So I want to move it out of its current location. So W for the move tool, drag it up, and then push it over to roughly the right place. And let's select this and object show hide. Well, roughly the right location. So I'm not falling into the trap of moving my torso. Get it close, have a look at what the jointing is like. When I say jointing, I mean the structure. Good to go. I think I probably just need to remove that poly there, which arrives as ready selected. Okay, so I'm going to join that to there. Now again, if I could spend some time kind of making the mesh go, kind of very close, and tweaking it into position so it kind of does a seamless merge. But a much better approach is to get it close. I could probably do with just scaling this down a bit, so in all axes. This is probably a good opportunity to use the wireframe view. A bit of spacing for maybe an elegant taper. Okay, now I need to combine them together. So start with that one, drag select there. Well, that one's going the right way around as far as I'm concerned. Okay, undo mesh, combine. I probably don't need the settings, apply, right, close, and then ring select that one, and then hold shift down, Find the magic edge. Do I really have to go all the way around? $13 now. Come on, we can do it. There, got it. 16 edges. Bingo. So again, you know, just a little bit of knowledge about what you're producing, a little bit of planning. So this is adding some things in together which initially don't have matching up topology. I'm just seeing where the vertices might be kind of, the phrase is supposed to be, it's coincident. And it's not very good actually. So I'm going to do a rotate on this tough lot of edges to select. There we go. So 8. So if I rotate that, I should be able to get it to match up to where it fits in the arm. Somewhat better. It's kind of like the mesh is, through the way those edges are twisted, the mesh is kind of showing me how it should be anyway. So I can line those up. Yeah, it's a bit better. Okay, so I'll go in and add these in, and then do bridge. Bingo. Okay, so actually it's a little bit cranked there. Now, if you really don't like that, and the thing to do is not undo and fiddle about to any extent, it's to still got 16 edges selected. So I double click to get that ring of 8 there, and we can see, I'm just going to go wireframe and just see what's going on. I don't think there's anything sinister went on there. And then yeah, I've got those new edges, I've got them added in, but they're not as good as they could be. So that's okay, so I'll just delete them. And the outcome of that is much better. Okay, and finally, okay, so there's a couple of joins there, starting with 2 which were, you know, already kind of good to go, 8 by 8, but then I had to, with that, in the case of the hand, I had to remodel that and change the topology, and in so doing didn't generate that many more quads, but needed to have fewer going down the arm. Okay, so rather than show all the kind of quad draw stuff where you got to relax this and get it to go all nice and curved and build out the shoulder, use soft selection for things like that. So when you kind of want to pull out some detail, select 1 or 2 verts, and with soft selection on you can drag a kind of bump or a bulge out quite satisfactorily. So in terms of the final thing, which was repairing symmetry, well, I've got really bad symmetry on this figure, haven't I? So obviously need to do something like that here. So you do it through face selection, because then whatever it gets rid of, it takes away. Oh no, do it through marquee. Whatever faces it takes away the verts and edges needed to build them. So now we've got half an object. Go to object mode, select this, and then I'm going to need to just think about which of the menu options it is. I think it is mesh. Yeah, so mesh mirror, and then you choose your axis. I'm going down the x-axis. I always need to rethink the mirror direction. That's okay, and it'll do To be honest, I'm not quite sure what cut geometry does, but this always seems to work fine to make a properly symmetrical mesh. Mirror direction, yep, that's going to be the thing that I'm probably going to need to revisit. Okay, so don't worry, it's all disappeared, and that's just because, as I said before, of the mesh direction. Don't be tempted to fix it up here in this dialog bit here. Do it in the box there. And there we go. That's it. Close. That's now a workable object. If we look over in the thing here, we've got that kind of history thing going on again. So I go Q, click off, click on. It's now an object of its own. Unfortunately, it shrugged off the lovely name I set up for it, but that's easy enough to do. So there, where it says pcube2, so rename it, and then just do edit, delete history, bingo, it tidies up what's there. Okay, and then just to easy now, just to test the history, let's try a bit of randomized selection. There's some selection that somehow arrived from, I'm not quite sure where. Okay, so symmetry, object X, as I did it, and as I'm rolling over, you can see that symmetry is working fine, even on these hands. And the final proof is you get or at least kind of convincing when you get an even number there, because it means there's one on each side selected. Okay, that's it for now. More on request.